Whatever is necessary to do, you do it. When somebody needs to be killed, there's no wrong. You do it. And then you move on. And you pick up a child, and you move him to the desert. You pick up as many children as you can. And you kill whoever gets in your way. This is us. Because he's a spark. He's a light.
Charlie, like, the idea of what Charlie was scared the shit out of me.
This was Charlie's trip. He bred fear in people. Always talking about anything that you might be afraid of, if it's some sort of sex or if it's some sort of physical harm or if it's some sort of thought. Whatever he could find that you would fear, he would play on.
For a third-grade dropout, Manson was surprisingly knowledgeable about world revolutionaries. He fancied himself like Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin, as illustrated by this family-made collection. However, he patterned himself after Hitler, teaching Nazi philosophy to his family and planning his revolution.
There are a startling number of similarities between Manson and Hitler. Manson, like Hitler, has some other aspect to his personality, some frightening and tangible power and quality about him that no one has yet been able to discover.
So when Charlie gets out, it's on. The revolution is on.
Wealthy debutante Sandy Good had earned her B.A. and was halfway through her master's when she met Manson.
Charlie said that everything was death, and that death was life, and that death was all, and that death was this, and that death was that, and that death, die, motherfucker, die. Everything was death.
Whenever we need to, we do. We respond. We respond with our knives. We respond with whatever we have. It feels good. It feels good to be ready to face death and love it. It'll be one man and one woman moving together, mowing down anything in their path, all headed towards Death Valley.
Manson attempted to murder the sheriff twice.
Charlie did control most of these people. People in the family that I've talked to were definitely under his control. Through suggestion, through mysticism, hypnosis, if you want to call it. I think there's a lot of people involved in that family that probably would not be capable of murder without Charlie. Brooks had told me that Charlie had told him that if he was going to stay in the family, that he wanted him to go to Shoshone and kill the sheriff. Given enough time, I think he's like anybody else in the family. He may have done it.
If I had still been in the family and hadn't gotten out, I'd be in jail now for murder.
Considering all the changes that we went through with Charlie, and the fact that we both gave ourselves up completely for Charlie. I mean, we did anything, gave up our thoughts, our bodies, our whole lives. I went out and stole cars for him. I went out and go out and get girls for him. Went out and got dope for him. I'd do anything and just got completely entrenched in his world.
Manson, who inoculated his family with hatred toward their parents, found his most avid disciple in Clem.
And we saw the little animals in the desert, and we'd see, like, the hunters come up in their jeeps, you know, and they'd be all drunk and stuff. Their awareness level would be about this high. And we see all the squirrels and the ground squirrels and chuckers, and we'd say, "Hi, you guys, get in your car, get in the holes, man, because the beasts are coming down the road." It's like Freud would say, everything is phallic and vaginal, you dig it? And so, like, they got the big dicks, man, because they can't fuck. Their mama has cut their nuts off, man, when there's little boys. So they fuck with a gun, man. Pow, wow. Experience all that, you know, vicariously.
Charlie wanted to use the fountain as a base of headquarters to go out and kidnap kids, bring them there, tune them in, or program them, or take them out to the desert.
Do you, don't you, want me to make you? It's coming down fast, but don't let it break you. Tell me the answer. You may be a lover, but you ain't no dancer. Look out, helter skelter. Helter skelter.
Now, throwing us in jail is nothing. We'll die for each other before you can separate us.
These novelties and posters quickly flooded the head shops and sold out. In a bid for even more publicity, he carved an X on his forehead, shaved his head, then arrogantly altered the X into a blatant swastika. His robot-like family followed suit. However, the press and the news media obliged again with headline coverage. And while Charlie watched from his cell, his girls sat vigil on the corner below.
They've taken one man and they put him in front of you and they put him in the newspaper every day. It's something to focus on. It's something to look at. It's interesting. And they make him very, very, very exciting, a devil of every type and description, everyone's nightmares, everyone's boogeyman, so that you won't notice what's going on right around you. So you won't notice that war across the ocean. And you won't notice your brothers leaving every day and getting killed. And you won't notice the rioting that's happening in the streets or the bombing. They're focusing their attention on a scapegoat so that you can look and have all your hate towards that one awful man. And so you won't look at Nixon and what he's doing. And Nixon points his finger at Charles Manson and he says, with his bloody finger, he says, that man's a murderer.
The motive for the murders was love of brother.
Because we knew we'd do anything to get Bobby out of jail.
It was simply that Bobby had been arrested for the murder of Hinman, and the girls, to get him out of jail, decided to commit copycat killings with writing on the wall and the whole thing. You know, multiple stab wounds. And thereby letting the police to believe that the killer was still at large. Linda suggested the Tate house, because she had been there. And she got in the car and she drove to the Tate house. Here's what Katie said, Patricia Krenwinkel. The prosecutor was, ranting and raving and said, why did you carve war on his chest? Didn't you feel remorse? And she says, no. She says, I wasn't thinking. The only thing that went through my mind is, here's one man who won't send his son to war. Lino LaBianca. They, more or less asked for this type of experience. There's sadomasochist movies, Rosemary's Baby, Repulsion. These people were putting out a picture to be murdered. Over and over again. We all got up on the stand. The three girls confessed. And very straightforwardly, they laid down why and how they committed the murders. And we all got up and we said, we knew. So it was a soul move.
Nobody really talked about it. There's something, it was really nothing to talk about. I remember Katie telling me about it, and I went through a change, and then I realized I had the baby. 1 million babies die, and 1 million babies are born.
But Sharon Tate's baby died. Yours didn't.
Anybody can kill anyone.
Did I know at the time? Yeah.
How did you feel about Sharon Tate's baby?
Not one way or the other. In other words, I knew that it was all perfect.
Sure.
As perfection is.
In other words,
I had a brother once who went to war, and it's the same love, and got shot and got killed, just like that, for nothing. It's the same thing, exactly. Love is being killed every day.
The people you call my family were people that you didn't want, children that were alongside the road that their parents had kicked out. So I took them to my garbage dump and fed them and taught them that in love there's no wrong. Everything they've done for love of brother.
I lived with Charlie for 1 year straight and on and off for 2 years. I know Charlie. I know him inside and out. I became Charlie. Everything I was Charlie. There was nothing left of me anymore. And all the people that are in there's nothing left of them anymore. They're all Charlie, too. He confided in me about killing people, about how groovy it was to stick a knife in somebody and turn it sideways, and about how groovy it was to lob off some guy's head and watch it go rolling, and how warm and groovy the blood was as it squirted all over the place, and how far out it was to take a gun and blast some guy in the stomach, about how far out it would be to go into a house and cut the pussies out of women and cut the dicks off of little boys and stick them in their mothers' mouths and wipe blood all over the place and smash bodies into things and just have pools of blood everywhere. Because he said there was no death. He said death was love. Charlie had no idea what love was. Charlie was so far from love, it wasn't even funny. But when I was in there, I thought it was love. I didn't know. How was I supposed to? I had never seen love in my whole life. And here's some guy saying love, love, peace, beauty. And at your back door, he's telling you the kill is all right. The death is just the most beautiful trip in the world.
The Manson family is now serving a combined sentence of 321 years.
For us to know.
The Tate LaBianca murders were the so-called story on page one, not only here in Los Angeles, but throughout the entire world. It is generally agreed that this case received more publicity than any other trial in American history.
Charlie has all the fear. Everybody has given their fear to Charlie. You have to make love with it. You have to know it. You have to know every part of it. And to know you know it is to know it. So that you could pick it up any second and shoot. Everybody is afraid of death. And that's what's holding things up. Nobody's content right now with the world they've created. Yet their minds are all locked by a fear of death.
Aren't you worried about the police?
If you want it, here it is. Come and get it. But you better hurry, because it won't be here long, you motherfuckers.
In the 9-month period preceding the Tate LaBianca massacres, there were many others seemingly unrelated murders, one of which was the bloody torture killing of musician Gary Hinman. His small house in Topanga Canyon had been a haven for homeless hippies, one of whom was handsome Robert Beausoleil, alias Cupid, introverted, religious, a devoted son. On Manson's orders, Beausoleil slaughtered his buddy, Gary Hinman.
Charlie and Bruce Davis drove Sadie and Mary Bruner, Bobby Beausoleil, up to Gary's house. He told Charlie, take your people and get out of here. And Charlie took a machete and sliced off Gary's ear. So Sadie sewed his ear back on with some dental floss. But still, Gary wouldn't give up the money, so they kept stabbing him and torturing him for 2 days. So Charlie said, well, you know what to do, kill him. Bobby stabbed him, and Sadie held a pillow over his head until he stopped breathing.
On November 12, 1934, an unwed teenager, Kathleen Maddox, gave birth to a premature baby at the county hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio. Father, unknown. She named him Charles Maddox Manson, later also known as Jesus Christ. Shortly after, the teenage mother was jailed for prostitution, and young Charlie became a throwaway child. He was bounced from foster homes to juvenile institutions to boys' towns to reform schools to federal reformatories to county jails to state prisons to federal penitentiaries, and finally to San Quentin, Cell 13, death row.
The hippie movement, when it started, was the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen. People walking up and down the streets, throwing flowers and kissing each other and hugging each other and taking their shirts off and giving each other shirts and smiling at each other and making love with each other all in the streets and in the park, and I could see music and everything in it. Everything that everything was for was always for fucking. That's what everything was for. If we weren't doing that, we was leading up to it. And if we weren't leading up to it, we was doing that. And that's what it was all for. That's what everything we ever did was for. Until he got on his helter-skelter trip. And then it seemed to change.
What Manson was seeking to do by these murders was to ignite helter-skelter. That is, start the black-white war by making it look like black people had murdered these 7 Caucasian victims. In his warped mind, he thought this would cause the white community to turn against the black community and ultimately lead to a black-white civil war.
I got into the family. First of all, I used to watch the black bus go up and down Topanga Canyon Boulevard. Charlie had this big black bus with a little box on top that used to tilt over to the side a little bit, so it looked like a little black guy with a top hat on. And I saw this bus going down the canyon with this wild guy driving it, who turned out to be Charlie. And some girls picked me up hitchhiking. It turned out to be some of Charlie's girls. turned me on. About a month later, I was walking through Topanga Canyon. I needed a place to sleep. It started getting cold. And so I went up and knocked on the door, but who came to the door was 3 girls. Some of the prettiest girls I'd ever seen.
At 16, beautiful Nancy Pittman, alias Brenda, ran away and joined the family. Brenda said, "I left home because there was nothing to keep me there. It wasn't a family. We just occupied the same house."
It's about 4 or 5 years of almost continuous stitching. It's our story. There's about 15 girls that worked on that vest. At the time that we all shaved our heads, we cut it first, and we cut off all the locks and wove them together and sewed them onto a collar. Sue's hair's on it, my hair's on it, Sadie's is on there, Leslie's and Katie's, Mary's and Capistrano.
Bordering on the cannibalistic, they recorded on the vest their customs, ceremonies, killings, and the numerous births. All babies were delivered by the family because doctors were barred by Manson. He said, "Doctors are only good for curing the clap." And babies became an obsession with the family. Manson ordered the girls to get pregnant, and the guys obliged. These children were denied nothing. They smoked pot, dropped acid, and participated in the family orgies. Patiently instruct these children, Manson appointed Bruce Davis, his second in command. A YMCA youth counselor, a Little League coach, a convicted double murderer.
It's only a game we play, question answer. To have something to do, to cause an effect, to make a change, to make something go.
When we got out to the lake, I started coming on to acid. Lynn was there, 5 girls and Charlie, and the whole bus took on the shape of a harem tent. And like I was a sheik, and I had all these women around me, and then I would look into this girl's face, and it would break up into little pieces and change into another face. And then I got up. I got real, like, panicked. Opened the door, and I said, "Charlie," and he turned around, and he looked just like the devil. And I said, "Man, we're in hell." And he says, "Yeah, ain't it groovy?"
All the guys had to get over all their homosexual things by doing everything that you could possibly think of doing with guys. And all the girls had to do everything they could possibly think of doing with girls. Any kind of combination that you could possibly think of. And all the virgins had to be fucked right off the bat, in super ways, and they would just completely flip out.
I was pretty friendly with the people at the stables. From horseback riding at the Spawn Ranch, Randy asked me, did I want to go get stoned? And so I said, yeah. So he took me over to the house and introduced me to everybody. And we sat around and got stoned, and everybody was bawling. And so I met up with Charlie at that time. And Charlie and I had sex. And I felt it. He was a pretty sadistic kind of a character. He, bit people, and he was kind of cold and cruel, and selfish.
With the global manhunt for the killers in its 4th month, Susan Atkins confessed to her first cellmate, Nancy Jordan. But Nancy kept silent, explaining, in jail, if you don't want your throat slit, don't snitch.
And she told me that to stab somebody is better than having a climax. To stab somebody is a sexual release in itself anyway, because the whole world is one big intercourse and everything in life is in and out, whether it's smoking, eating.
Charlie said the whole universe is one great big fuck. Everything. He said it was everything.
Like they think it's right to murder. They want to murder. Look at all the people, and they get a kick out of it. A sexual kick out of it. The whole thing, I think it's sick. I mean, I don't know.
But she said they wanted to do it, something to really shock the world. They wanted to take their eyeballs out and squish them against the walls and really make it gruesome. She was going to make him make love to her right in the midst of the climax. While he was making love to her, she wanted to stab him. She wanted to see the look on his face. She said, wow, it'd really be something to see. It probably would. She was trying to boast to me about how much acid had enhanced her knowledge.
But if it was taken with something like belladonna, which is what I had heard they use, belladonna makes you completely insane. You can't tell reality from a hallucination.
I took it once, but it's horrible. Oh, you lose your mind like you have no control. I figured it like this sex trip burned out, you know, like their orgies and things. I think like they weren't getting all the enjoyment out of it like they used to, you know. You know, I just couldn't figure out anybody telling anybody about it, you know. That's the quickest way to get caught.
So dark, wind so cold, those fires burning, you can't grow old. Just a playing with a poison one, sunning yourself with the devil's song.
Games, hiking, drugs, and orgies was their lifestyle. An adolescent's paradise, no responsibilities, no decision-making. All in, no ego. They sang together, loved together, and killed together. Togetherness. Why, Shorty Shea's decapitation was a family project. Some tortured, some butchered, and some buried the pieces. And the establishment smugly dismisses the Mansons as an oddball phenomenon. These kids came from our own schools, our own neighborhoods, our own homes. By the time the Sadies and the Katies and the Leslies had reached the age of 14, they'd witnessed over 14,000 killings on television.
We are what you have made us. We were brought up on your TV. We were brought up watching Gunsmoke, Have Gun Will Travel, FBI, Combat. Combat was my favorite show. I never missed Combat. I always watched Combat because the guy that was the lead in Combat was my hero. You know, he was a big, strong dude, and he shot 40 or 50 people in each show, but he was still the hero. You know, he was still the beautiful dude that was doing it for some kind of cause, which they never told us. And I'd wake up every morning, you know, early in the morning before anybody was up, and I'd turn on the cartoons. And I'd watch 40 or 50 or 60 minutes of people shooting people. They'd make it exciting, you know, they'd be on stagecoaches or with whips or whatever, you know, Snidely Whiplash, and they'd make them, you know, characters that would catch the kids' attention. And this guy you were looking to for, you know, entertainment or whatever you want to call it was killing all through the show. Every show we ever watched was all killing, all those old-time gangster movies where, you know, it was all exciting. They were in the cars with the low hats on, and they were cruising, and they were shooting out the windows, or, you know, it was all exciting. And we are what you made us. Exactly. So what's the big deal? 5 or 6 people get killed, and you all freak out and put it on us, and we're just reflecting you back at yourselves.
Charlie is you.
He reflects you. He's a
your
mirror.
reflection.
If you're guilty, then he reflects guilt back at you.
Because we're all guilty of the whole thing.
Manson has frequently said that he is merely a reflection of what other people want to see in him. If a new girl joining the family were seeking a Christ figure, he would be her Christ.
I've been laying up here paying for your sins for 2,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah, he is God. And that's why they're hanging him. That's why they're killing him. That's what they want to kill. Is God. That's what the preacher wants to kill when he wears his black robes and stuff. That's what the judge sits up there in his black robe and orders to death.
Yeah, I believed he was Christ.
In other words, Christ is love. Now, Charlie is love. That makes him and Christ one.